And back with our politics lead, this time tomorrow, President Biden will be just hours away from what could be his most consequential State of the Union address yet. As two wars rage and funding for both Israel and for Ukraine hang in the balance. Tomorrow's guests at the State of the Union are going to highlight this pivotal moment for the world. Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson invited the parents of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, who's detained in Russia and has been for nearly a year. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle have invited more than a dozen relatives of Americans who were killed or held hostage by Hamas terrorists. That's according to Axios. Also in attendance tomorrow, Christy Shamblin. Her daughter-in-law, Marine Sergeant McCaul, was killed in Kabul at the Kabul Abbey Gate attack during the chaotic U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. Christy will be the guest of the Foreign Relations Chairman, Republican Congressman Mike McCaul, and they are both with us today. Christy and Chairman McCaul, thank you both for joining us today. I know it's a busy time over on the Hill, but Chairman, you are threatening to hold Secretary of State Antony Blinken in contempt for failing to provide the documents and key with information that you and your committee have requested. But this is not the first time that the two of you have been at loggerheads like this. What do you think is going to make him hand them over this time?
Well, he did last time, and I had a very good conversation with the secretary. We had an agreement in principle to turn over the notes that were part of the after-action review report about the Abbey Gate bombing in the fall of Kabul, the collapse of Afghanistan. Apparently now the White House is intervening, despite the agreement I had with the secretary verbally, and now they are attempting to assert executive privilege, even though they've had the documents for many months and they have never asserted executive privilege before. What I told the secretary was, look, the American people deserve to see this. And more than anything, the mothers and fathers of the 13 servicemen and women.
When was the last time you spoke with Secretary Blinken?
That was on Friday.
On Friday. So you recently spoke and were not able to come to a resolution?
We did. We came to a verbal agreement.
So it's been since then.
Since that time, the White House now has intervened in the matter and are trying to block the production of these documents.
All right. Christy, you have been critical of how President Biden has talked about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Tomorrow, he's going to be addressing a lot of global issues, probably in his State of the Union address. What do you want to hear from him about the 2 years ago, what happened to your daughter-in-law?
I want to hear how he's going to strengthen our armed forces and support them and answer our questions and lead to a thorough investigation like they promised so that we can move forward in a positive way and make it better.
President Biden, he's often called the consoler in chief. He does talk to families who have lost loved ones because of his own experiences. Have you experienced that from him as you've been coping with the death of McCaul?
No.
Have you spoken to him?
No, he has not reached out to our family. We've actually reached out to the White House and have never heard back. We asked to meet with them to kind of understand where their thinking was in calling this a success, and we've not received a response. It's been months. No, that's not been our experience at all.
Sorry to hear that. Chairman McCaul, my understanding is that you have a hearing coming up in about 2 weeks. Generals Kenneth McKenzie and also Mark Milley, who just left his post, will be appearing before your committee about this Afghanistan issue. What are you expecting to hear from them?
Well, you know, you have General Milley, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who advised the president on Afghanistan, and then General McKenzie, who is a CENTCOM commander, the general in charge of the whole region that Afghanistan falls under. And it's going to be very high level. We also want to know, like, who on the ground was involved with the suicide bomber operation. We want to know, like, Tyler Vargas Andrews testified before my committee saying to me that they handed off to the command center the sniper photos based on a be on the lookout notice that they had to report and then request for permission to engage the suicide bomber, and they never heard back from the command center. Of course, the suicide bomber went off and killed Nicole, Christy's daughter-in-law, and 12 other servicemen and women.
I want to take a step back because tomorrow, as we've been talking about, is the State of the Union. Two big crises are unfolding at the same time. You have Mike Johnson, the Speaker, inviting Evan Gershkovich's family, detained by Russia. That's all part of this conflict in Ukraine. You have other members bringing victims of the Israel-Hamas war, and yet Speaker Johnson is responsible for holding up single-handedly funding for these conflicts. Are you comfortable with the message that sends?
Well, I know we passed Israel funding, and that didn't get through the Senate. I've been working with the Speaker's office. I do believe that after we get through the regular appropriations this month, that we will have a supplemental on the floor that would include Israel, Ukraine, and also Indo-Pacific. And it's vitally important we get this done. And I would say...
Do you think it'll be just by itself or in addition to border, which has been a
I know that there are discussions right now about border provisions. Of course, the president has a lot of authority already to reverse the policies that he undid from the prior administration that has caused this crisis and this disaster. But it's really important to note as we talk about Afghanistan, this was the turning point in my judgment on foreign policy. Once Afghanistan we surrendered to the Taliban, it imploded, and we abandoned our allies. Then we saw the Russian Federation coming down to invade Ukraine. We see Chairman Xi with his sights on Taiwan. And then at the same time, the Ayatollah, who's their ally, has reared his ugly head in the Middle East and with the invasion of Israel and Hamas.
But at the same time, Congress is responsible for providing this funding. And every day it seems, especially in Ukraine, time is of the essence. Yeah. Are you confident? You've had conversations with the Speaker that he will actually get this done, funding for both Ukraine and Israel. And what's the timeline, you think?
I do. I think the Speaker understands the national security interest at play with respect to Israel, Ukraine as well, and the Indo-Pacific. These are high major threat vectors that we are facing right now. And I do think he understands this from a policy standpoint. He wants to get through the regular appropriations, then we'll get to the supplemental.
All right. Chairman Mike McCaul and Christy Shamblin, thank you both very much for joining us.